Okay, this is part 5 of the holiday pedestal Predicta restoration, and you can see now that I have removed the 9L37 chassis from my barber pole set, and it's not quite as easy to get out of this particular unit versus the holiday. The holiday just has a couple of screws and it pulls out, and it's the chassis is compact, it's all together, and pulling one out of this barber pole set is quite a bit different and quite a bit more involved. There's several different variation or pieces of the chassis, and we'll take a look at it in a second, that are mounted into different spots, so it doesn't all pull out as smoothly. But you can see here I pulled the speaker. The speaker for this particular model is quite a bit larger than the one for the holiday set. Nice big speaker, probably at least 10-inch speaker, maybe 8 or 9-inch speaker. Anyway, it was mounted right there. But yeah, I haven't done any cleanup on the cabinet yet at all. It's in really good shape. This is kind of interesting. This is the inside of the back, and you can see where the vent slots are for cooling of the TV. That's pretty, it's gotten pretty toasty, so that's kind of interesting. Okay, the interlock is left behind, the speaker is left behind, and then of course these two wires are actually the antenna. Okay, the internal antenna of the Predicta. So that's a look at the cabinet. I'll be working on that and cleaning it up really good. Hopefully get it as nice and shiny and pretty as the holiday cabinet. Okay, here's a topside look at the barber pole chassis. You can see that there's some differences right off the bat, in that in the barber pole, the tuner is detached. It's only connected by this thin strip of metal that connects the two chassis, or connects it to the main chassis. And then there's this little 4-prong plug that plugs in right here. So it is detachable. Now the holiday chassis has the same thing, but if you'll recall, the tuner basically just is attached to the chassis right here, and that plug is there. It's just down underneath, so you don't really notice it. But with this particular set, your video and audio cable is here, and then this strip, and then this connects directly into the cabinet, separate from the original or the main 9L37 chassis. And the same with the control boards. Okay, this is the on-off switch, and the picture controls, as well as the antenna hookup. These are all located in different spots inside the cabinet, so they are not attached to the chassis except for their wiring. So that's quite a bit different. But then outside of that, it's the exact same chassis. The only thing is this one, obviously goes in vertically, and so one thing it doesn't have that the other chassis is the basket cage, or the bars underneath that allow it to set down on a table unobstructed from the components down there. Well, there's no need for that in this chassis, so when you set it down like this, it's just really resting right on the choke and the vertical output transformer. So I'm going to have to get some kind of 2x4s or something like that, so that I can prop this up without it laying on components underneath. So that's a little bit different too, but other than that, it's the same chassis. So one of the first things I was really interested in is what kind of switch we had, and this one here is an obvious replacement. That is not a Philco part, and I kind of suspected that because this is constructed a little bit different, and it just doesn't quite work in correctly with the knobs, so it looks a little bit funny. But and the other thing is that the way the on-off switch works on this, it just pulls out to be on, and then you push in to turn it off. Okay, that is different from an original manufactured part, because as you remember from the last one, you click it and it comes on, and you click it again and it turns off. But the good news is at least this on-off switch works. So but that is different, and it just the only difference is this contrast control just doesn't quite butt up next to the on-off switch, so you have that little gap there on the controls. This chassis was a little bit more dirty. You can see there, as evidenced by the tubes that I pulled. I don't know if this was stored outside for a time being or what, but they were quite a bit dirtier than the other tubes. The other thing interesting is every tube in here is an original Philco branded tube, except for two. So I don't know if they were religious about, replacing their tubes with Philco tubes, or if these are indeed original tubes. GE tube, and then this is a Sylvania tube, which Philco was known to use some Sylvania tubes at times, but I'm not thinking they probably would have in this set for that tube value. But anyway, those tubes, I need to clean those up and check those and see if they work. One other thing that's interesting that I wanted to show you before we flip the chassis over and look at the underside is the flyback in this particular chassis. And put some light down here and see if you can see that. That's really interesting there. This particular flyback has had a lot of its coating burn off. In fact, there's a bunch of it in there, and it's kind of interesting since this chassis is vertical, it falls to the side of the cage and not to the bottom. And you can actually see here on the horizontal output tube lead, it's actually melted and went through and dripped down on there. And it's just really, it'll come off, but it's just really gooey. And then the other thing that happened was, this is actually my repair. When I actually opened this cage and tried to get the high voltage rectifier tube out, this little nipple just fell off. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but right there, it's a little bitty tiny wire. My camera focus in right there. It runs right here and connects up through there, so it's very delicate. So what I did was, this is just electrical tape, liquid electrical tape, and I've got it held back on there with that for a temporary repair. I'm going to have to get some RTV 133 and redo this whole flyback. You can see here, we're all the way down to the windings, and this stuff is just flaking right off, so it's going to have to be recoated. But one thing we need to do is test this flyback, because no matter how it looks, I'm hoping and venturing to guess that it still will operate. It's just going to take quite a bit of cleanup. You can see how hot that gets, and really just melted that stuff right off of there. So, like on the last chassis, I'm going to get the flyback checker out and see what we've got going on with it. Alright guys, got the ICO flyback and yoke tester out, and I have one end connected to the cap, the high voltage rectifier tube. I have the high voltage rectifier tube pulled, so we won't get any false readings. You should always take your horizontal output tube out and your high voltage tube out to do this test. And the first thing we're going to do is just simply touch this to the plate cap, and we should see the needle swing to the left, and see if we have continuity. And we do. So that's good. So there was no damage done so far from that that little piece of the flyback falling off. So now we'll do the shorts test. And we'll line our needle up on the iron core setting. And then this line right here, we should get good. We should have a good flyback if when I touch it to the horizontal output tube lead and it stays in the good there. So here we go. Okay, we're good, and I can actually hear it. I don't know. I'm going to be real quiet and see if you guys can hear this. I don't know if that's going to come through on the microphone, but there's a slight whining noise when I make that touch. It's the actual sine wave going through. Actual ring test. I don't know if that's going to come across, but yeah, that's good news. Looks like this flyback is still functional. So that's good. We've got the on-off switch, which is always a problem in Predicta. Looks like it was in this one as well, and it's been replaced with a different kind of a switch, but I'm sure it'll work okay. Looks like this yellow lead has become disconnected, but I'll go through all that. Now we'll flip it over and take a look at the underside. Okay, here's a look at the underside of the barber pole 9L37 chassis. And as I take a quick peek around, looks like it still has the original electrolytic caps in it, as opposed to the last one that I did. Had that orange electrolytic in here. There's the thermistor. Yeah, as I go through, I'm just not seeing anything that looks like a replacement. It doesn't look like there's been any repairs to this underside done at all. All original caps. This chassis is a little bit dirtier. Here's our sand power resistor, and you notice here there's been no modification to it, and the reason is this set actually has the original 2.35 filament volt picture tube, the one that caused Philco all the problems, because those were the tubes that had a very short life. But mine tests pretty good, so no more than I'm probably going to play this set if I can get it running I think that should be fine. Yeah, I'm not seeing any evidence that anybody's been under here anywhere. Yeah. Well, that's good. It appears the only thing that's ever been done to this, other than, maybe some tubes changed, is that this on-off control pot has been changed, which is par for the course with these Predictas. And generally, you would see this modification because they would have went to a different picture tube, but maybe this picture tube, or maybe this set doesn't have that many hours on it, and the picture tube is still in great shape, or maybe it was just a really good one and it's still got life. But it sure does look like this set has some hours on it, just by looking at that flyback cage and the heat buildup that was on the inside of that cabinet. But maybe it didn't. So anyway, I wanted to give you a good look at it. I'm not going to go through and show you probably anything. I'll probably just go ahead and do my standard recap resistor check here. And then when I get that done, I'll give you a picture of that. And there's going to be a lot more cleanup to do on this one. But I'll do just like I did with the last one, recap this, and then change the electrolytics. And then we'll flip the chassis over and then obviously start working on those circuit boards. So, yeah, anyway, that's where I'm at on this one. And I'll probably just go ahead and upload this video, because it may be a while before I post another video, because I just don't want to bore you with the same thing you saw on the last chassis. But when I flip it over, I'll give you an update of where I'm at. Okay, so that's the Predicta barber pole chassis. Thanks for watching, guys.